Share the screen. So good morning. So we will start today's lecture on production planning using MRP. Specifically, we'll be looking at the lot sizing heuristics as part of MRP. The agenda is to look at this lot sizes approaches. I've already shared some material as a self-study material. So I've already posted in Moodle. I hope you have at least taken a one look at it. It's pretty straightforward, the MRP process itself. So I feel this is something that you can go over it yourself. If you have any specific questions on that, you can ask. Let me just summarize. So what was the MRP process that we have saw? Is that overall in this MRP, we are dealing with this problem of production planning. We want to figure out what is how much quantity of order we need to place to the production shop floor, or even order to the supplier to get the raw material components. So that is what is called as production planning. So we want to pretty much determine this quantity right here, order release. The input to the MRP are kind of 4 items are there. One is item master, which gives us the bill of materials as well as lead times. Then we take a look at what is available inventory on hand. Then we look at what is the scheduled receipts of previously scheduled orders. And then we look at the master production schedule, which gives us the gross requirements. With these 4 inputs, then we do the MRP process, which is a 4-step process, which involves netting, lot sizing, offsetting, and BM explosion. And then again, we iterate for all the components as per the bill of materials. The first step of netting, we use that to determine what is called as net requirements. Which is nothing but the gross requirement which we got from our master production schedule minus on-hand inventory. Meaning, I know these are gross requirement. If I already have the inventory on hand, why produce, right? So we remove the on-hand inventory minus scheduled receipt. If previously itself I have ordered some material and I know it is going to come the next week, then I take that into account when I schedule future, when I make future orders. Hence, we come up with what is called the net requirements against which we need to decide the orders. So based on this net requirement, we are going to do what is called as a lot sizing. This is a key discussion for today's lecture. There are various approaches and heuristics to do this lot sizing. At the end of lot sizing, we will be finding what we call as production order receipts. That's what we find at the end of this lot sizing. And third step is we offset. The offsetting is as per the lead time. And once we offset, we get what is called as a production order release. The difference here, acronym wise, they look the same. POR, production order receipt, and production order release. Production order receipt refers to when I need the inventory, when the inventory is going to reach us, when the order is going to reach us. Production order release refers to when I need to make the order. If something takes 2 weeks, then I need to release the order this week and it will be received 2 weeks hence. So the week in which it is received is called as receipt, and week in which I'm going to release is of course called as a release. Once we do that, then we do BOM explosion. By that, what we mean is typically we start with the end product, end item, and then we schedule for all subcomponents and sub-assemblies that together make this end item. This is what we call as BOM, and for all these subcomponents, again we'll compute the net requirement, do lot sizing, do offsetting, and then keep moving until we get the entire picture, entire production plan. So the result of the production plan will be a planned order release, as we seen here, or if previously scheduled thing has to change, then we call it change notice, or any updates within the old plan. Exception notice is suppose it ends up violating, or like I need some requirement but I cannot meet that requirement at all. Those things are called as exception notices, saying we will be short of inventory, we cannot meet the requirements, etc. That we call as exception notice. So one thing you can see that is in production planning, we plan to exactly meet the net requirements. We typically don't want any shortages. Notice is nothing but explicitly accounting for shortages, explicitly noting any shortages. In production planning, typically we don't allow for any shortages. Any questions on this? A simple explanation of that is available within Moodle. If you have read it, good. You can easily follow the lecture. If you have not read it, that is also fine. We can still go ahead and do this lot sizing algorithms, and then again you can go back and review the PDF file uploaded in Moodle and look at the solved examples, and you should be up to speed. Okay. So. Okay, so let me so the key focus of today's lecture is this lot sizing decisions. It's pretty much the key decision in this entire MRP process is to decide what is the order release quantity. The order release quantity can also be called as job size or lot size to the shop floor or the supplier. So this is pretty much what we want to do, and the key decision lies with the lot sizing. Now this lot sizing decision can actually be broken down into a balance between the setup cost and the holding cost. What we pretty much want to do is determine the production quantity that will minimize the total holding and setup cost over the planning horizon. That is, I already know what is setup cost, and suppose I know the holding cost, then we need to come up with the production plan such that I balance out the setup cost and holding costs. Here an important assumption that we will make is the setup cost incurred in every period where production is planned. That is every period. So you can assume a period, let us say for example, a period is a week. Then we are going to assume that suppose production is planned every week. Still at the beginning of the week, we do a proper setup for which lasts that entire week, and that is being used for that week. And hence the setup costs incurred every period where production is being planned for. Yeah. So let's look at an example costing. Just to reinforce this concept, we have seen some of it as part of our inventory control. Suppose a company, say PRM, assembles a product. The lead time is 1 week. Setup operation for machinery takes 2 workers about 1.5 hours. The workers' average wages is 44 per hour per worker. The company uses a holding cost based on 20% annual interest rate. Each assembly costs the company rupees 156 in materials and value added labor. Compute the setup cost, okay, and compute the inventory holding cost per unit per week, which is now defined as H. In this case, setup cost, okay, is nothing but I have 2 workers times 1.5 hours of work for a setup into rupees 44 per worker hour. So nothing but 2 into 1.5 into 44, which is rupees 1. That is our setup cost in this particular example. Now, the inventory holding cost per unit per week is what is being asked. We are used to looking at inventory holding cost per unit per annum. So we're slightly deviating from that. We are looking at inventory holding cost per unit per week, which is H, which is given as 20% of annual interest rate, and assembly costs the company or rupees 156. So let's include that. So here it becomes holding cost is 156 into 0.2 divided by 52, accounting for 52 weeks in a year, which gives us 0.6 rupees per unit per week. This is setup cost and the inventory holding cost. So for most of the part of today's lecture, we are going to, it is a running example, so we'll assume the same values of K and H in all our lot size calculations. So K is 132 and H will be 0.6. The different lot sizing rules or heuristics that we're going to take a look at in today's lecture will be lot for lot, fixed order policy, EOQs, and other heuristics. Here we have seen, at least as part of the MRP example posted online, we have looked at this lot for lot or even a fixed order policy already seen, but we'll still nevertheless go over it once more. Let's start with the more simple ones and then we'll slowly move towards a little more near optimum heuristics. Let's take the first case, lot for lot policy. Let us see what the policy is. In lot for lot, we produce in quantities equal to the net requirement of the corresponding period. That's it. So whatever is net requirement, just make that. That's the most simplest policy that we can think of. Example, suppose the net requirement of the assembled products at PRM industry is shown below. The lead time is 1 week. Let us assume this is a net requirement. So in week 1, there is no requirement. In week 2, there is a requirement of 5, 10, then 50, 40, 30, 35, and 30. So a total of 8 periods, starting from period number 2. In lot for lot example, we simply have to just produce exact same quantity that is required. So we are just going to make 5, 10, 50, 40, 30, 35 or 30 units, right? Since I'm producing exactly what to meet the requirement, my ending inventory will all be 0. And now, so this 2 steps that we just did is called as the lot sizing steps. This is the lot sizing steps. And to compute planned order release, we do what is called as this time phasing. In time phasing, all we are going to do is take the planned order receipts and shift it by 1 week. Why 1 week? Because the lead time is 1 week. So lead time is 1 week. So we just write 5 here, and 10 comes here, and 50 comes here, and so on. So you can see this is planned order receipts as well as the planned order releases for this particular example. Now let us compute what is the total cost if we follow this lot for lot policy. The total cost, let us start with total setup cost. So TSC stands for total setup costs. There's nothing but number of periods with production times K. That is a cost per setup. So in our case, we have production units at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 periods. So it is 7 into K was 132. So the values we are going to use is K is 132 and H is 0.6 per unit per week. This was just continuing the same example. So in this case it comes to 924. The total holding cost is nothing but sum of all the inventory into H. I stands for inventory. Here the inventory is all 0, so total holding cost is 0. So our total cost nothing but 924 plus 0, which is just 924. So this is the total cost if we follow lot for lot policy in deciding our production plan. Yeah. Okay, there is some question. I request Rishabh, you monitor the chat posts, and whenever I pause, you can read it because it's difficult for me to look at the slides as well as the chat boxes. So how will we approach the same problem when lead time is 2 weeks? And then second, so first let me take that. So if it is lead time is 2 weeks, we just shift it by 2 weeks. That's it. Instead of shifting by 1 week, we shift by 2 weeks. So in period 2, we need 5, but it takes 2 weeks to produce. So that will be noted as an exception. But everything else can follow the, we just shift it by 2 weeks. That's it. So time phasing that way pretty simple. If it's 2 weeks, we shift by 2 weeks. If it's 4 weeks, we shift ahead by 4 weeks. That's it. So can you explain how MRP is a push system because it depends on forecasts? Exactly, Amaya Mittal. We call it a push system only because it depends on the forecast. If it depends on actual orders that has already been placed, then it is called a pull system. A pull system depends on after an order is made. Then if you make it, it is called a pull system. If it is already made based on estimates, then it is called a push system. So that's the definition of a push system. Like if you go to a hotel and then after you order, they start making your meal, then that is a pull system, that hotel. But you go there and it is already made, and then as soon as you order, the shopkeeper takes it from the inventory and gives it. For example, like if you order chai, it is already made. Then it is called a push system because he's already forecasted that there's a demand and he has made the product and kept, and as soon as customer comes, he just gives it to the customer. Yeah. So that is the LFL policy. Now let's move on. Let's look at a second more very simple policy, fixed order policy. Fixed order policy, at least the variant that we are discussing today, is we are defining it as a quantity produced in period T is the sum of the net requirements of P subsequent periods. P is given as a parameter of the policy, we just assume that. So Suppose I decide to make a production, I say that, okay, this week I need to produce, so let me produce for this week as well as the next week, both this week itself. So whatever I do, I will use it for the next week. It may not happen at home, but some of you maybe have experience living on your own, either renting apartments or something. So sometimes you decide, okay, I'll just cook in the morning and just eat for the morning as well as the night. So that means it's like a fixed order policy. So you decide that whatever you're going to cook in the morning, it is going to last for your lunch as well as for your dinner. So for 2 periods, you're cooking at one go. At home, probably most of you are at home, so probably you get freshly cooked meals every single time. But if not, then it is like a fixed order policy. Yeah. Let's better understand it with an example. See, most of these MRP is more easier to understand with examples than with definitions. Let's look at it. Suppose net requirement assembled product at PRM industry is shown below. Again, the lead time. So the example is going to remain the same. We are just going to change the lot sizes and come up with some new with the actual orders. Now I've written that FOP and P equal to 2. That is the lot sizing that we are going to use. P equal to 2 means whenever a production happens, we do it for 2 periods. Now, initially the requirement is 0, so I don't bother about period 1. In period 2, when I set up an order, I produce for period 1 and period 2 and period 3. That is for two consecutive periods. So here I'll decide to get for 15 units. If I get 15, then since the requirement is only 5, the end inventory will become 10, which gets consumed in the second period. So in second period, I don't need to make any production. So here, when I come to the fourth period, again, I do it for 2 consecutive periods. So I do 90. Ending inventory in period 4 will become 40 because 90 minus 50 is 40. And that 40 gets consumed in the next period. So I get 0. And here it becomes 65, 35, the same logic. And I get 30 right here. And in planned order release, all we are going to do is shift it by 1 period, which is the lead time that is given. Here's the same thing. I just wrote it more neatly. Let me. Yeah. Now again, for this, let us compute the total setup cost and holding cost. Here you can see the total setup cost. Here you observe that the setups happen 4 times, 15, 90, 65, 30. So total number of setups is just 4 multiplied by 132. So the total setup cost comes to 528. Total holding cost is nothing but the sum of inventory into H. H is again is 0.6. So that is given again. Remember, K is 132 and H is 0.6 is already given to us. So here the sum of all the inventory is 10 plus 40 plus 35. So 85 units into 0.6, which is rupees 51. So total cost is 528 plus 51, which is 579. It's quite easy to observe that setup cost is very high. So all we did is we reduced the number of setups, and of course we have to give some money towards holding the inventory, but it drastically reduced the cost. We went ahead from 924 to 579. It's huge reduction. So we reduced the number of setups. It increased holding cost. So that's pretty much a trade-off that we're trying to do. Keep increasing your holding cost, but reduce the setup cost and see where it kind of reaches a balance. Now we look at, so any questions on the previous two? So now we already know a method which kind of balances the setup cost with the holding cost already. We already discussed this economic order quantity approach where we balance out this holding cost and setup cost. So let us see what will happen if we use the economic order quantity. See, is there a limit to what we can produce in one period? So that was a question given. So no, one of the assumptions in MRP, which is actually limiting assumption, is that there is no capacity considerations that is taken right here. So most of the MRP systems that we are seeing are all uncapacitated models, meaning there is no limit on the quantity that is going to be produced. That we'll take it up a special case later. So for now, we'll assume that there is no capacity on what to produce in one period. Coming back to EvoQ. Yeah. Let's just recall. So EvoQ, I can compute our Q star is nothing but square root of 2kd by h. K, we already know the cost per setup, and observe that h is defined as a cost per unit per week. We already got the units as week. That means D should also be the demand, not per annum, per week. The units of this H and D should match. So here D, we are going to take it as the average demand per week. Take it as average demand per week or average weekly demand. Okay. So now units will match, and then I can compute our Q star. So what we're going to do is whenever I need production, I'm going to produce Q star. So first let us find that Q star. Again, we'll take the same running example. We have the net requirements with us. So based on net requirement, let us compute our D, or rather D bar, I guess. Is that average of this 5 plus 10, 50, 40, 30, 35, and 30, which comes out to be 32.5 units. Is your weekly demand. It is just average of these. We are kind of ignoring this because see, 1 is given as 0, so we are not considering that. We are just taking from where we want production from 5 to 30 and take that as an average demand. If somewhere intermediate period, suppose like period 5 was 0, then of course we'll count it in our average computations, else the starting periods we just ignore. So we have D bar, and then I can compute our Q star based on this. It's nothing but 2 into K into 32.5 by 0.6. Q star comes out to be 119.5, which let's approximate to 120 units. So now whenever we need quantity, let us assume that we are going to produce 120 units. So that's the policy using EvoQ. Let us now do the MRP process using EvoQ quantity. So again, the same running example, only difference is in the lot sizing approach. We are going to use EvoQ. The EvoQ value we already determined as 120. Now, in period 2, I need 5 units, but since I'm always going to produce in terms of economic order quantity, we are going to assume that I need 120 units here. As soon as I do 120 units here, 5 I'm consuming immediately. So I'll have 115 here. Then next period again I have a lot of inventory, so I don't need to produce. After I consume 10, I have 105. Then I will have 55. Then I will have 15 units after end of period 5. But now in period 6 I need 30, but I have only 15. But since lot sizes are always comes in 120, so let's take it as 120. So I have, I'm going to get 120 plus I already have 15 minus this 30. So that gives my inventory of 105. Then I have enough inventory 105 and the requirement is only 35. So that makes it 70. And then this ends with ending inventory of 40 units. Unplanned order receipts are nothing but just shifting of this. So I produce 120 here and 120 here. Yeah. Now, if you observe, we just had two setups. Of course, there's a lot of ending inventory. In fact, at the end of the planning horizon, still I have some balance leftover inventory with us. So over a long run, this may work out quite fine, because though we may know, for example, the requirements for next 8 weeks, but we do it regularly, right? Every few weeks we keep on repeating this exercise over maybe a period of a year or so. Maybe this might balance out. And these ending inventories can come the next round of MRP exercises we do as a already available inventory on hand, so we can always account it in the next period. Now, let's look. Let us figure out the cost for this. The total setup cost. Will be for two setups into 132. So 264 is the total cost of setups. Total holding cost is sum of all these inventories. Again, it's sum of inventories times your H, which is 505 into 0.6, which comes out to be 303. So total cost here comes about 567. Any questions so far?
Kshitij here.
Yeah.
Sir, in calculating the average inventory for a week, sir, I'm not getting that quantity 32.5. As I see the total in 8 weeks.
Which quantity you are not getting?
32.5 as average inventory, average required quantity for a week.
This one. It's just average of all these numbers. 5 plus 10 plus 50 plus 40 plus 30 plus 35 plus 30 by 7.
Sir, but this total is 200. So 200 by 7 it should be, but it is not 32.5.
Is it? Did I make a mistake in this average computation? 50, 60. Let me just quickly check it. What do I do? What is it? 50, 60, 70. Oops. It's like I made a mistake in the average computations. Yeah. Yep. Sorry, it looks like I made a mistake in this average computation. So let me 7, which comes out 28.5. Let me just correct it. So good catch. So D is 28.5. Let me. I can erase it, but I think this is better. So we know where it went wrong. 2 into 132 into 28.5 by 0.6. Let's, one of you can just help me out here. 2 into 132 into 28.5. 0.6. Yeah, 111.9, which is, let's take it as 112. So it's not 120, it's 112. So that will again change of these numbers. So maybe easier to erase and Do it again. Method doesn't change, it's just the actual values. So 112. So 112, then I get 107, 97, 47, 7, then again you get 112 here. That makes it 119, 30, just in case. Let's not make any further mistakes. 89 minus, I get a 54, and I get a 24. So this becomes 112, 112. Setup cost doesn't change. The total inventory cost is going to change. Let me just calculate what is the total inventory. 107 plus 97 plus 47 plus 7 plus 89 plus 54 plus 20. Plus 7 plus 47 plus 7 plus 89. 2.6. 425 into 0.6, which comes out to be 255 plus 264 makes it 519. Yeah, I think now that should be okay. So the total cost in EOQ be adjusted as we have some inventory left in the last period. Not really. We'll just account for this, and it happens in a rolling horizon. So we'll just take it as that is given. It doesn't affect your cost too much, right? Maximum is 24 into 0.6. So we'll just take all the inventory. It makes our calculation easier. In practice, we don't do MRP just once and then forget it. In fact, we keep on doing it every few periods and keep revising even our old plans, etc. So we will discuss it after later. Yeah. Any other questions? And thanks for the catch. Yeah. Okay. Now let's move on to a what is called as a silver meal heuristic. Again, basically, remember we need to get a balance between this holding cost as well as setup cost. So people have come up with various heuristics which they can quickly implement because we have only recall we have the demand or whatever the pattern or how much quantity required is known. We are not worried about the stochastic distributions. But again, it is not a constant number also. We know some fixed values over multiple periods. So demand is deterministic but still variable. That is the case we are trying to solve here. So it should be possible for us to balance this setup cost and holding cost in a much better fashion than what a EOQ does, which operates on a much longer term and gives a steady state solution. So this heuristic was proposed, again, many of the heuristics came in 60s and 70s. The person is named after the person, Silver Meal heuristic. It is a forward method based on average cost per period of plant order. So let us assume that R1 to Rn be the net requirement for the next n periods. And suppose it produce in period 1, and if it lasts only for 1 period, then what is the cost? So that is given as, say, that will be only setup cost, right? Suppose in R1 to Rn is the net requirements for the next 10 periods. I produce in R1 and that lasts only for that R1 period, then I will incur only setup cost. There's nothing to hold. suppose in R1, I produce enough quantities for both R1 and R2. That means for period R1, I will incur a setup cost plus I'll incur a holding cost for the R2 quantity, which is what is given in the second equation. And Silver Meal suggested that we base it on the average cost per period. So as part of the Silver Meal heuristic, we consider the average cost per period. So because first period has only setup cost, but C of 2 will mean I have setup cost plus holding cost and take an average of it. And suppose the order is for that period and subsequent 2 periods, then the cost is an average of setup cost plus holding cost for the required inventories divided by the 3, which is average holding cost. And I can do so on. We do it until Cj is greater than Cj minus 1 and then stop and set the production level as R1 plus R2 up to Rj minus 1. If I fix the production level exactly equal to the requirements, that means at some period I have to have an inventory of 0. So this will ensure that I don't have any excess inventory at the end of the planning horizon. That's why we set up the production level equal to the requirement. So we'll revisit this. Let me just explain it again with an example, and then we'll again come back to this process. Let's look at the same example. Now let us see what happens when we do the Silver Meal heuristic. Again, just focus on the planned order receipts. So, for example, in week 1, the net requirement, let's just call it a net requirement equal to 0. So we just ignore it. Let's start in week 2. Okay, let's see what I mean by starting in week 2. So in week 2, either I can produce any quantity, right? I can produce only for week 2. So one option is I start in week 2. Then in week 2, let me say I produce say 5 units for week 2 only. In that case, my cost will be C of 1, which will be nothing but my setup cost. Okay. Or I have an option in week 2. What if I produce for week 2 and 3? So that means I'm going to produce 5 plus 10, 15 units for week 2, 3. In that case, my cost will be C of 2. So here this 1 and 2 represents a number of periods in which it shows the number of periods the produce lasts is used for. So if it is C2, C of 2, that means I'm producing both 5 and 10, 15 units. So suppose I produce 15 here, then I will have an excess inventory of 10, which gets consumed here. Right? This is used to meet this requirement here. So then I'll incur a setup cost for producing 15 here, plus I need to account for the holding cost of 10 units. Or I have an option. I can produce 5 plus 10 plus 50, 65, which covers the requirement of weeks 2, 3, and 4. In that case, my C of 3 will be K plus hold cost of this 10 units plus hold cost of 50 units. It's not equal to, it is more like the CF2 is defined by these things. So that's pretty much what the expression defined. So let us again now go back to the algorithm. So if you see the algorithm, what it said is If in the current period I produced only for that period, then the cost is C of 1 is K. If I produce for that period and the immediate next period, then C of 2 is K plus H into R2 divided by 2. C3 is K plus H into R2 plus 2 to H into R of 3 divided by 3. Because I'm taking the average of the cost, that is the heuristic. We don't need to take the average, we can take other things, but that becomes a different heuristic. We look at it, and so on and so forth. How long should we do it? We do it until the Cj is greater than Cj minus 1. Then we stop. For this part, again, we will do the maths and then figure out how it is going. Now coming back to this example, let's now see what will happen here. Suppose I start in week 2. Why start in week 2? Already we told week 1 is 0, so I'm just going to ignore. So I'm going to start in week 2. It's already written here. So if I start in week 2, let me write it here. Start in. If I start in week 2, then this becomes my R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, R6, R7. So these are my R's. So now C of 1, that is my production only lasts for that particular period. That means it is K. It is just 132. If production lasts for 2 periods, then it is K plus R2 into H divided by 2, so which is 132 plus 10 into 0.6, the whole divided by 2, which comes out to be 69. Now C of 3 is 132 plus 10 into 0.6 plus, here again in week 2, you see if it is C of 3, that means I'm producing enough quantities to meet the next 3 weeks. So that means this 50 units gets carried over for 2 periods. So if it is C of 3, the whole divided by 3, which comes out to be 66. Still, you can see the total cost is still decreasing. So I keep continuing 132, 69, 66. I keep continuing until it shifts other way. C of 4 is 132 plus 10 into 0.6 plus 50 units we carry for 2 periods plus 40 units we carry for 3 periods at a cost of 0.6 divided by 4, which comes out to be 67.5. So suppose I start in week 6 and my let us just call it let me just call it, what shall I call it? Let us just keep it y. Suppose in this first case the y is 5, hence the cost will be only this much. The second case y is 15, because I'm producing for both period 2 and period 3. The third case y will be 65. Fourth case y will be 65 plus 40, 105. That means I have to produce 5 units will be consumed immediately, setup cost, plus 10 units for the next period and 50 for 2 periods and 40 for 3 periods. But here we see that C4 is greater than C of 3. So we stop because it has reached the stopping condition. And we said that production order will be equal to R1 plus R2 plus R3. In this case, R1, R2, R3, we have defined it as here, you can see there, which will be equal to 65 units. So in this case, Y will be equal to 65. If I produce 65 here, I consume it immediately. Oops. So I will have inventory of 60 here, then inventory of 50 here, and inventory of 0 at the end of period 4. This will be our ending inventory. Okay. It's not over yet. We just determined the first production lot size. Now we have to again start the steps starting in week 5. So whatever we got earlier, I've written here. So in week 5, when we start, this becomes your R1, this becomes your R2, this becomes your R3, this becomes your R4. And again, let us determine this Y unit. So again, we start in week 5. Suppose Y is only 40 units. That means C of 1 will be just 132. Y is 40 plus 30, which is 70 units. Then C of 2 will be equal to 132 plus 40 into 0.6. We take an average of it. It comes out to be 75. C of 3. In this case, it will be 40 plus 30 plus 35. 105. Which is 132 plus 40 plus 0.6 plus 35 into 2 into 0.6 the whole divided by 3, which comes out to be 96. Here you can see that C3 is greater than your C2, so we stop. So my production order, that is Y in this step, is nothing but sum of R1 plus R2, which is 40 plus 30, which is 70 units. So let me go ahead and write that 70 units right here. So that means that I have inventory of 30 here. At the end of period 6, I'll have inventory of 0. Then again I have to restart in week 7. But it's quite trivial to see that, week 7, if I only do it for that, I'll incur a holding cost. I mean, only setup cost 132. I can just quickly write it. So start in week 7. Then C of 1 will be just 132. Again, this will be R1 and this R2. C of 2 will be 132 plus 0.6 into 30 by 2, which comes out to be 75. I ran out of periods, but it's still decreasing, so I just stop there and just make the units as 65, 30, and 0. And to get a planned order release. Now we have finished the entire table, so now I can just simply write it as 65, 70, and 65 as a production quantities. Now you can see that the silver mill here recommended 3 setups, each is going to cost 132. So the total setup cost comes out to be 396, and total holding cost is again the sum of inventory times H, which comes out to be 102. So total cost comes to 498, which is still slightly better than our EOQ model. Any questions on this? This brings an end to the silver mill heuristic. Any questions?
Hello, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, sir. So if we have to stop at week 7 and the net requirement should not be 35, something less.
What is it?
Then if net requirements were less than 35.
No, I didn't understand. Which step are you talking about?
I'm talking about week 7. Suppose we have to stop at week 7 instead of 8.
Yeah.
So in the table.
Yeah.
So let's say we have to stop at week 7 instead of week 8.
Yeah. So the
And
only setup cost will be incurred. That's it.
yes, and then our total cost will be
And
minimum.
the
To
planned
minimize the
order
total
receipts will be
cost.
35 in week 7.
Yes.
And the number of setups may continue to remain the same, but the ending inventory will change.
Yes.
Yep,
But
correct.
what if we order more when we were ordering in week 5 instead of ordering again at week 7?
No, but even in that case, this stopping condition will be met. 75, then it becomes 96. Because of that, we can't do it.
Yes, that's correct. But if like 132, if 132 is more than the total cost of all the 3 weeks, like if we add
No, so this is a
total,
forward
if we
going
come,
heuristic. So now see, with this MRP, there are many heuristics. So the method you are saying is that this is silver meal heuristic. You can come up with another heuristic, but then you have to have a consistent heuristic so that you can algorithmize it. Each time we can't just look at it and write some random numbers, right? So we have to write a
yes,
standard algorithm which is based on the given numbers, it will perform. None of these guarantee optimum solution. So if you
mm,
feel we can modify it by considering forward as well as backward, that's a different heuristic. So we still have some more heuristics left, and in fact exact algorithms also left. So
yes,
this
sir, yes,
covers
sir.
most of the cases, but still we can come up with our own methods to keep improving it. For
Yes, sir.
example, specific scenarios, of course, we can come up with a very specific way to solve it. In fact, you don't even heuristic. Maybe we can look at the numbers and figure out the optimum, which also we can do. We can actually enumerate it, which also I will discuss. Anything else on silver meal heuristic?
Sir, once again, you will again tell me the calculation of C3.
Which step? Which week?
Sir, when y equal to 105.
Here. This one. C3 means I'm here. I'm producing 40 plus 30 plus 35. So that's why you get 105. 40 plus 30 plus 35. So at period.
Sir, I think in calculation that should be 13 into 0.6.
Sorry, it has to be 30. So with 30. Sorry. Yep. It has to be 30. I think I wrote this value correct, but I made a mistake here. It should be 30 here. Please make a note. Yeah.
So then only answer comes out to be C64.
Huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. So now let's move on to one more heuristic. As you can see, whenever you look at it, you feel that there's some improvements can be made, right? That's what everybody felt, and then a lot of new heuristics has come up with, which works on a variety of problems pretty decently. So this least unit cost heuristic is also very similar to the silver meal heuristic, except that here we compute the average cost per unit of the order. Whatever is order size, we calculate the average cost per unit. Earlier it was average cost per period, now it is average cost per unit. That's the main difference between the silver meal heuristic and the least unit cost heuristic. That is, if you see the expression, the numerator is the same, but denominator now it includes the size of the order. Here is R1, R1 plus R2 and R1 plus R2 plus R3, etc. So that is the least unit cost heuristic. We'll reinforce it with again, we'll solve an example and take a look at it. Once again, we'll start in week 2. So starting in week 2, I need to determine this y. Again, just write it this R1, R2, R3, R4, R5, R6, R7. So C of, suppose I set y is equal to 5. That means my C of 1 is nothing but my K is 132 by 5. That is your order quantity, which is 26.4. Suppose I do y is equal to 5 plus 10, 15. Then my C of 2 is nothing but 132 plus 0.6 into 10 by total order quantity of 15, which comes to 9.2. Still it is reducing, so we'll continue. Suppose y is equal to 65. That is in 3 periods I'm considering. So then this becomes this plus 0.6 into 2 into 50 divided by 65, which comes out to be 3.04. Still reducing. Suppose I produce for 4 periods worth of inventory, then it's 105. So it is C of 4. This is nothing but this plus 0.6 into 3 into 40 divided by 105, which comes out to be 2.57. Again, it is decreasing. So we'll continue that. Suppose y is add another 30 more units, so 135. Then C of 5 comes out to be this plus 0.6 into 4 into 40. Sorry, into 30 by 135, which comes out to be 2.53. Still stopping condition is not met. Suppose y is 160 plus 35, so it's 170. Suppose y is 170, I produce for 6 periods. I write the expression plus 0.6 into 5 into 35 by 170, which comes out to be 2.62. Now C6 is greater than C5, so we stop and we say y is equal to R1 plus R2 plus all the way to R5. So my y comes out to be 135. So that's my value of y. So if you see here 135, then ending inventory becomes 130 here, then 10 units and 120, 70, 30, and then it becomes 0 at the end of this particular period. Now it's quite trivial to see that the cost is anyway going to reduce here. So we can go ahead and actually write out those numbers. We don't need to do the math. So this has to be 65 units. You can do and check out the math, but that's what you will get. So then my planned order release becomes 135 and 65. There is 1 period or 1 to 2 periods. Definitely there will be reduction because as you can see here, it went from 26.4, which will continue to remain the same. Versus if I do for even 1 more period, the cost only increases with 30 plus 0.6, but divided by total quantity. So it has to come down. denominator increases almost doubles. Yeah, it won't be 26.4 for example. I can divide with 35. So sorry about that. But yeah, it will be 65. So we get this table which I just wrote here. Of course, we can start in week 7, complete the table, then we'll get it here. So in this case, again, if you see there are only 2 setups into 132, so it is 264 rupees is for setup. The holding cost is sum of all the inventories is 130 plus 120 plus 70, 30, 30. The sum of all the inventories times 0.6, which was the inventory holding cost, which comes out to be 228. So the actual holding cost comes out to be 492. This particular case of least cost heuristic, which is again slightly better than your silver mill heuristic. That's why we told these are all heuristics. It doesn't guarantee optimal solution, but what it tries is to see how we can balance out this inventory holding cost and the setup cost. And people have come up with various heuristics to see it. Of course, each has a domain of applications somewhat. Meaning if there's huge variability, some may work better than the other, etc. But there is no theoretical proof of convergence to optimum for any of it. It is just something that has evolved over time. Any questions on this? Least unit cost heuristic? There is still one more heuristic for us to go. I hope the numericals are correct. If not, I can quickly verify it, but it should not be off by too much. So the next heuristic that we are going to see is called as a part period balancing heuristic. In this method is to set the order horizon equal to the number of periods that most closely matches the total holding cost with the setup cost over that period. Again, you just read this description. It doesn't, the method is so heuristic, right? It's so non-exact. Method is to set the order horizon. So I need to figure out what is the order horizon, which is equal to the number of periods that most closely matches the total holding cost with the setup cost over that period. That's it. So we know setup cost. So we have to, at optimality, we already know that setup cost should be equal to the holding cost. Remember the UOQ graphs that we did where the setup cost and the holding cost are equal to each other at the optimum. So the same logic, we just keep doing it until the setup cost is very close to that holding cost, and then decide, okay, if they're both equal, then that should be your optimum order quantity. The order horizon exactly equates the holding cost, setup cost will rarely be an integer number of periods because, hence the name of the method called part period balancing. It is approximate, it doesn't exactly balance it, but close enough. Let's understand it better with the example. Let's start in this week 2. Let us say we already know K is 132. So we need to figure out how the holding cost increases and how close it comes to 132, and then we stop. So again, we are starting in week 2. Let me write it here. Start in week 2. So let us define it as let's say order horizon, and then we'll have a total holding cost. This is going to create a simple table. Suppose order horizon is only for one period. That is I produce in week 2 only to meet week 2's demand. That means I'm going to have a holding cost of 0. Right. So here again we'll take the pretty easier. We can continue to use the Y. Suppose I produce Y of 5 units. then 5 units is going to last just for that period only. That means there's no holding cost. Suppose order horizon is 2, that means I'm going to be producing 15 units. That means my holding cost comes out to be 0.6 into 10, which is 6 units. Suppose I produce 65 units, that means I'm producing for 3 periods, 5 plus 10 plus 50. So in this case, the total holding cost will be 6 plus 0.6 into 2 into 50, which comes out to be 66. Suppose instead I produce 105 units, that will last for 4 periods. Then I have 66 plus 0.6 into 3 periods into 40. Why 3 periods? Again, you can say I produce 105 here. So that means the 40 units is carried over 1, 2, and 3 periods, which gives a total cost of 138. Now each time I'm comparing this K with this H, this total holding cost, with my total setup cost K, which is 132. So 138 is kind of, stop. Where we're stopping is because your K 132 is kind of, so this total holding cost has, we stopped because this is greater than your K. We stopped when it's greater than K, but then we find that 132 is closer to 138 than 66. I'm getting 132 somewhere here, right? So I look at the previous number and the next number. Looks like it's closer to 138. So we decide that in period 2, order for periods 2 to 5. So through that I can just set y equal to 105. If I do that, then I have inventory of 100 left over here. I'll have inventory of 90, inventory of 40, inventory of 0, and I'll do any production until this point in time. This is how we get the first set of numbers. Again, we have to restart now in week 6. Let me just write it here. So we start in week 6. Again, let me write it as order horizon and then total holding cost. Let's again continue to have the value of, let's use a different notation. Let's call it X. Suppose order horizon is only for 1. Let us go to the previous slide. So what I'm denoting here is I'm keeping this as X. So I can produce either 30 or 30 plus 35 or 30 plus 35 plus 30. So that's what we're going to do. First, if I only produce 30, it lasts for only 1 period, holding cost is 0. If I produce 65, it lasts for 2 periods. Then the holding cost comes to be 0.6 into 35, which comes to 21. Suppose I do plus 30, I get 95. It lasts for 3 periods. So it will be 21 plus 0.6 into 2 into 35, which, 30, which is equal to 57 units. I ran out of periods, hence I'm stopping. I stopped since a planning period is ended. So still I'm less than your holding cost, the setup cost. So just fix X equal to 95. So let's go back and fix this X equal to 95. That means I will have, I consume 30 here, so I'll have 65 units left over here, 30 units here, and 0 units here. My planned order releases comes out to 105 and then 95 right here. Now, this is a completed table. You can see again here, total setup. Again, you can see there are 2 setups. So cost comes to 2 into 132, 264. Holding cost comes out to be 325 into 0.6, which is 195. Total cost comes to 459. Any questions on this part period balancing? So in this summary, we actually looked at various lot sizing heuristics, and this is a summary of all the examples that we did. In lot for lot, we found out there are 7 setups. Total setup cost is 924, and total cost is, of course, 924. And then we did FOP of P equal to 2, EOQ, silver meal, least unit cost, part period balancing. And in this case, the part period balancing turned out to be the best one. It's not always so. It is just sheer chance that you just got it. So silver meal can be better. Least unit cost can also be better than this, depending on the scenario. So all these are heuristics, does not guarantee the optimal solution. Any questions on this? Any questions? So we looked at various heuristics. So now we can see the model is actually quite straightforward, right? We have we know the exact deterministic values. We know the lead times. Everything is constant. There's no stochasticity. I need to, and I also know what is the trade-offs I need to do. I need to trade off the holding cost to setup cost, and I have to minimize the total cost. So this can actually be written as an optimization model, and we can actually solve it to get the exact solution. So let me check. We look at the exact solution approach in next class. So I can take any other questions now, and we can look at the exact solutions in next class. It will be very interesting. So any other questions? I can take it now.
So
yeah,
the stopping criteria which we have decided, so they are just based on heuristics, or
which one?
Is there any logic?
There is a logic. Most of the stopping criteria, the logic is the cost is increasing, right? So typically, let me see, do I have an example? Some space.
So for the silver meal case, for example.
Yeah. So let me use this white space to answer it. See, usually the cost curve is convex. You can imagine cost curve is like this. I don't know how it is. Cost curve is somewhere there. So what we are doing is incrementally estimating some cost value somewhere here, somewhere here, somewhere here, somewhere here. And as soon as I figure out that this value is actually higher than the previous value, I just stop. But if your step size are too large, because those continuous function that we have drawn, but we evaluate it only at discrete points, because only those many options are feasible anyway. So we don't need to evaluate all the continuous options. So we evaluate only these options. So that is the intuition going behind identifying the stopping condition, where the stopping condition is the cost is of the subsequent. By adding that extra unit, your total cost increased. This is like the total cost curve. Total cost increased, and you are better off by not increasing the production any further. So that's what has happened. So that's the intuition. Any other questions? Let me see.
So my doubt was related to even if the total average cost per week is increasing, the ordering cost is 132, right?
Yeah.
So that is higher than the average cost with the increased average cost as well.
Yeah, so let it be. So what we are doing is not for the future period, right? For the current period, I need to produce now. Should I produce enough to last today, tomorrow, day after, etc. But whenever I find it is not optimum, it is better to restart the production again. Again, as an example I told, right? Like for example, we can always cook and store for a week in your fridge, for example. Suppose you want to cook and store for a week. But many times we don't do, because one, we don't have fridge space, we don't have such a huge fridge. And cooking for so much quantity is also going to take a lot of time. So we do in smaller batches, but we can cook for a day, 1 day, or at least 2 days, or 3 meals, depending on what it is. So we are not looking at what will happen in the future. We are looking at, in the past. What we are looking at is, today I want to produce. Should I produce for only today, or tomorrow also, or day after also, etc. So on. So once I decide how much to produce now, then that part is frozen. So I don't deal with it. Then again I start, okay, now where did I leave it? Because it's planning. So Monday I decide that it is better off I do for Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday, then I finish it. Then again I start, okay, till Thursday, let's see what I can do. Because the demand value is changing. Demand value is a constant, you would have got an exactly repeating pattern, but the demand is changing. For example, if you knew how many people are actually eating in the house, for example, suppose your parents and everybody left, and you were the only one, probably you might ask your mother to or yourself, cook in large quantity, because you're the only guy who's eating. So you can easily cook for to last for you 3 days. And then you say, okay, I'll just cook now once and make it last for 2 days, so I don't need to cook again, or whatever you order in Swiggy or whatever, for last for 2 days. Then I don't need to do it again. I'll just reheat and just eat it. But if you know that after 3 days, 10 people are coming to the house, you're not going to produce today for considering that demand. Probably you'll wait closer to that and then start cooking. So that's a balancing in cost that we try to do in production also. Okay, let me take up one more question in the chat box. Ashwath has asked, in FOP, we can run it for P equal to 3, 4 to see if cost reduces. Of course, these are all heuristics and there is no optimization method for this to determine what is optimum P. We just have to run it iteratively to figure it out what it is. The exact method we will see, because once you go into exact method, then we don't need to stop halfway, because in exact method, what we're interested in is find out what is this production quantities. So we can just ask we can formulate it a model and just figure out what is the actual quantities and just solve it. So we'll take a look at it on Friday. Okay, let me then stop the class here. I can take some more questions. I'm going to stop the recording.